So I can't really help you until we've actually diagnosed the problem sufficiently. So a lot of people will quickly jump into telling you that this is either a perception issue or a practice issue. So people who fall into the kind of perception diagnosis very quickly are usually the ones who are telling you you've got imposter syndrome. Most people seem to talk about imposter syndrome as a little thought fart these days, as if there's a little glitch in your mind, you're seeing yourself incorrectly, and you just well, I'm not even sure quite what it is that people think you're meant to do with that, but it seems to me like the idea is you can just tell yourself to not think that, and somehow magically you will. Good luck with that. It's not worked for me. And then you have the other camp who tell you this is a matter of practice. So they will say things like, well, confidence comes with more experience. You just need to do this more often and then it will get easier. Yeah. And to some degree, that may be true. It has been my experience in some ways, but not always, because sometimes what happens is that the more exposure we have to something, the more negative experiences we have with it, and then we just associate it with like painful experiences in the future. Like, even if nothing kind of objectively goes wrong, like with your audience, you know, if you really find it unpleasant and difficult, you know, because you get very anxious beforehand, you're procrastinating, all of that, you know, any kind of unpleasant sensation in the body, whether that's just to do with how you feel about it or what happens in your audience, then that is going to go into that bank of, this is a really unpleasant experience, please let's not do that again. Yeah. So actually your confidence and your relationship to public speaking can actually get worse over time. And quite frankly, I make my money from women who are experts in their field. They've got loads of experience in their work and often in public speaking, and they're still like hating it or they've come through the worst of that and they're building up the skills of their team. So it just can't be true, yeah, that confidence and experience are kind of directly linked. So what is actually going on? Yeah, what's actually the real problem? How do we diagnose that correctly? Because it's only when we actually diagnose the problem correctly that we can then have an appropriate solution. Yeah. So before we crack on, you might want to know, like, who is this one if you've not met me before? So my name is Nisha. I'm a public speaking coach and also an ordained Buddhist. So Nisha was the name given to me at my ordination in 2021. A couple of fun facts about me: I'm also a full-time van lifer. We left London in 2022, and I also have a spaniel who is one, and he has just woken up from a big nap. We went out with his brother Oakley today. My spaniel's called Pedro, so he might show up. I'm determined to do these videos without like any editing. That's really important for me with this channel. So if he shows up or needs something, I might need to respond. I'm hoping I can just press pause and we'll continue. So yeah, what we're going to talk about today is the difference between confidence, conviction and competence for the most part. That's confidence, conviction and competence. And at the end, we're going to talk about a fourth thing that is really important to look at when we are addressing your nerves, especially if you're a female founder or leader. This is going to be very, very relevant to you. It's very, very topical. Well, I was going to say at the moment, like all the time, basically, if you're visible as a leader, especially if you're talking about things online. So we'll get into that. Oh, there we go. There's some. But before we do that, I just say, look, this isn't how I plan like keynote speeches and workshops and things like that. You know, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then do apply to have a question answered on this show that's about kind of specific kinds of public speaking. There'll be a link in the video description to apply to have a question answered. How I'm preparing for these at the moment is I normally get an idea from when I'm creating an Instagram reel. I just kind of chat to the camera when I'm making those 90-second reels, if you follow me on Instagram, and then often an idea pops up. And this time it was like the difference between confidence and conviction, and then competence came in, and then this fourth element. And then I often just spend 10-15 minutes jotting some notes down. I might let it percolate in the back of my mind while I'm getting on with other things in the day. And then normally like the next day I spend maybe about 20 minutes writing some notes coming back to it just before I record and then I go, because this is a particular kind of context, so different kinds of prep need different kinds of things. But yeah, I just thought you might be interested in how I plan these. So look, these are just like some messy notes. I mean, look at that. You can see the black pen is where I've come through just beforehand. So yeah, I'm not scripted. I've got a rough idea of where I'm going, and we're just really in kind of conversation, because these are much more informal sessions. We're building up a different kind of relationship to here, and so of course it's going to feel different to what we'd have on a keynote speech when you've got a very limited amount of time quite often. So yeah, my problem that I've got with a lot of stuff online, or what I just hear like random, like well-meaning people say when they talk about public speaking confidence, is, as I said, this just quite simplistic distinction into like perception or practice. Either you just need to change how you think about yourself magically somehow, or you just need to get more practice with public speaking, and then you'll be fine. Yay, lols, it's not working. Yeah, so I think there's these three different categories of confidence, conviction, and competence. So confidence, I'll just go into them briefly and then we'll dig into them more in a minute. So your confidence, you can see, is a kind of perception of yourself. Then we've got conviction, which is your perception of the words that are coming out of your mouth. And then we've got competence, which we could see as a kind of more objective measure as to how good you are at public speaking. And there's a whole bunch of things that could go into that. For example, like the amount of times that I say like and on my videos, for example. I think it's quite a trivial thing. But there you go, there's one thing that could go in there. So we've got conviction, so we've got confidence, conviction, and competence. Now, it seems that from the stuff I can read online, because I'm doing a bit of digging around to see what's out there, that often people will treat these things as kind of like tie together. Yeah, so as your competence goes up, so will your conviction and your confidence level. So that's that thing really about, let's ignore conviction for now, but this idea that confidence will increase with experience or competence. You can see that's almost like, yeah, there's just these three things, and competence goes up and everything else goes up like this. But that's not how I've experienced it myself. Yeah, well, I could say a lot of different things actually about my past. I think I've spoken about it more in one of my previous videos. I think a Buddhist guide to public speaking fear, I talked to you about more of my journey. So yeah, my confidence levels have gone up and down. So I kind of see things more as almost like dials on like a sound system. I was playing around with one last year at Buddha Festival for doing talks in a big marquee, and I was like, oh yeah, these are like these little knobs that go up and down. So they're in relationship to each other. They definitely affect each other, but they're not exactly tied to each other. So typically, most of the women I coach who come to me, they will have actually very high degrees of competence, but their confidence levels, I'm gonna have to make sure I get all these right, so their competence levels can be quite high about public speaking and their background, their career, they're actually delivering on the job, but their confidence, their perception of themselves is actually like completely out of whack with that. Now the opposite can happen. Yeah, you can have really high confidence levels, speak with a lot of conviction about what's coming out of your mouth, your ideas, but actually your competence might not be so high. And I hate to kind of overgeneralize about genders here, but the immediate thing that comes to my mind was being at Cambridge and having quite young guys, bless them, who are very, very convinced by what they think, which they've probably only read recently from maybe a newspaper that they've found, and would be very happy to just kind of spout out their ideas and opinions, often regurgitating other people's, and then would get shot down by a lecturer or a supervisor. But they were just very good at articulating themselves. So it sounds very convincing because they're very convinced of themselves. So we know that that's not true. And just to say, is I know this isn't, that doesn't apply to all men. Yeah, I grew up in a small town where if you were smart, you would get bullied for it. And I knew loads of boys and young men at that time who would definitely be nervous with public speaking, because they hadn't been encouraged, they hadn't had the opportunities that some of these boys at Cambridge had. So it doesn't, I'm not overgeneralizing here, but there's some patterns that we can see. It's just like an example, kind of a caricature of that situation. But I do want to be careful in these talks to not be polarizing around genders. That's very important to me. So if you're a guy watching this who needs to build your confidence levels, like I've helped guys like you as well, please do reach out if you want my support. And thank you for being here. I appreciate you giving your time to listen to me. So these dials, confidence, conviction, competence, they move all up and down. So let's just dig in a little bit more into how they are different. And in doing this, as I kind of map out this territory, it might be that you have a little aha moment in here to work out what actually might be going on for you. And as I said, definitely stay to the end, because we're going to be talking about something that I think most people aren't talking about, which really, really frustrates me, and it's often a major factor for you. So confidence as perception of self. Look, I'm sure there's lots of different definitions of confidence. I'm not even sure if this is like the correct dictionary one, but anyway, this is how I kind of see it. So it includes your perception of your relative public speaking skills, how articulate you might be, how good you are expressing your ideas, whether you say whether you make eye contact, all that stuff. So there is that sense, there is that element of your perception of how you're doing. But I think it also includes a whole bunch of other things that can be quite unconscious for women, including like how you feel about your body, because we get loads of messages, don't we, from probably from when we're born, actually, about our looks. Like, I'm sure there's some studies out there around like the number of comments that girls get about their appearance versus what boys get around things that they're doing. I'm pretty sure I read some of that when I was doing social and political sciences at Cambridge. So there's often quite a bit of anxiety around how we look, which is often unconscious. And what I've noticed, certainly in myself, so I wonder if you have this too, but since I kind of had my initial sort of feminist awakening, as a lot of us do at university, I became really critical of myself for caring about how I looked, because I was like, this is a patriarchal thing, I shouldn't care about how I look. But the reality is I do. Can I tell you my particular thing is around the size of my arms. These feel sausagey to me at the moment. So I've often had and I imagine a lot of women, I've had a thing about weight over the years, and that gets kind of fixated on different parts of my body, and the degree of sausageness of my arms is one of the things. Like, I even noticed myself looking at a photo of a friend earlier on today. Like, this is wild, but I just want to be open about what goes on in my mind and like how it's relevant to public speaking. So I saw a photo of my friend on social media, and immediately I thought, I wonder if she's put on some weight. So I've put on some weight over the last 18 months after my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and then when he died. And so so of course, like, my arms got bigger. Anyway, so I saw this photo of her, and I actually went on, I had to catch myself, but I actually went on to her social media to see if I could see her arms from a different angle, to see if she put on weight. Like it's madness, but I'm being honest with you, because like this stuff is so deeply ingrained to focus on our bodies. We're not always commented on their figure, their appearance in the news. That's happening loads, isn't it? So there's that whole element of it. But I think if you've got any kind of interested in women's rights and the kind of history of women and discrimination and all sorts of things like that, then you kind of feel like you're letting the side down if you have any of these kind of superficial kind of leanings still in your mind. And as I said, they're so unconscious, aren't they? Like, what a waste of my time, to be looking at the size of a friend's arms today. But so I think that comes into it. There's a whole thing about what we're dressing. We can get really anxious about what we're wearing before, keynote speeches and presentations and things like that. I think we just also worry about our kind of general likability as a person. I remember this horrible moment when I was about 17, and I was out with friends in Bath, and we were waiting for the train to come to go home. And we were doing impressions of each other. It was sort of an awful thing to do with any women, let alone like teenage girls. And I remember it getting on to me. And basically, the moral of the story was that I, at the time, basically made everything about me. If there was a conversation, that I would turn it towards myself. And I remember in that moment seeing how unlikable that was. And I got a real complex about it, and I still, to some degree, do have today, yeah? So there's often this kind of thing of like, oh, am I just sort of generally likable, like as a person, yeah? Like other things, like the tone of our voice. That's one of the things I often hear women have resistance around. One of the reasons why they're resistant to listening back to recordings of themselves, so they just hate the sound of their voice, yeah, or just how they look and move. Like we pick up on all of like these little things about how we're presenting ourselves that we dislike. So yeah, this whole like confidence bucket, this perception of self, you see, I think it is a lot broader. And sometimes when we get down to it, it might be something which seems like as simple but runs quite deep, like I just hate the look of my face. That might be it. Or I just don't know what clothes to wear right now, or I just feel frumpy, or I've put on a load of weight and I don't feel myself anymore. So there's a lot around this that we have to unpack, and that might be what's going on for you. So when women come to me with this kind of general question of like, how do I feel more confident public speaking, their kind of sense of their problem is so vague. Yeah, it's just this general feeling of like, I don't like how this feels, please make it better. And then we start digging under and all of this other stuff comes out, and it's quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah, which is why I think it's so important to be digging into that deeper stuff with someone who gets it and who's just very kind and you've got enough time and space around it. Because when we start unpacking all of this, it can just feel a bit like, like it's not a helpful metaphor, and we need to shift the metaphor so that we don't have so much aversion to it. But our initial experience of it is, I think, it's a bit like pulling hair out of a shower plug, yeah? You look down and you're just like, me, there's just a load of self-hatred here. It's just like ickiness and past experiences and what other people have said to us, and it's all horrible, yeah? So, yeah, I think that's why it's important to have a good container around this. And just to say, if you're ever listening to this, and you start feeling like, oh, I feel a bit tearful now. But if you ever start listening to it and you start feeling tearful or angry or anxious, please do reach out to me through this apply thing and ask a question via that. Like just pause the video and do that, and then maybe go and listen to one of my meditation practices in Less Stress, More Impact in 30 days. There'll probably be one around feeling joy again, yeah? But I think when we start initially opening up this stuff, we can realise that, oh my gosh, there's just like a whole life's worth of kind of painful experiences in here, and then we don't really know what to do with it. So it's important that you kind of stay well in this. And as I said in previous videos, if you've had any kind of experiences that are traumatic and anything that I'm saying ends up triggering off any of that, please do, well, you're very welcome to reach out to me, but of course, like, reach out to a trusted mental health practitioner as well if you think that would be helpful. I'm just assuming everyone here is kind of like reasonably well, and you'll just do what you need to do and get the right support as needed, yeah? Okay, I felt I needed to caveat all of that, because I even felt myself, I was like, oh God, here we're going into all this stuff again. So yeah, that's that whole kind of bucket around confidence. So conviction for me feels very, very different. And I came up, it sort of clocked this difference in, yeah, when I was talking to you via Instagram the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, that this is something that's a bit different that's going on. So your perception of the words that are coming out of your mouth, what is that really about? It's like, do you believe in the ideas that you're putting forward? Do you believe in the advice that you're giving to people, or the suggestions for them? So whatever you're doing, yeah, you are selling something, whether you are selling this cup, whether you are selling public speaking services, if you hadn't clocked, this is part of my sales technique, if you're selling this like cute notebook, or if you're selling, donating to a charity or a different kind of service, or you are, I don't know, selling like policy within government, like everyone is selling something, yeah. We want people to invest their time, their energy, we want them to change their behaviour in some way. So the question is, like, do you really believe in what you're selling to people? And do you really believe that it's worth whatever you are asking them to give up, whether that's their time, their money, their power, like all sorts of things you might be asking people to give up. They might have quite fixed views about themselves and the world, and you're asking them to give those up too. So again, there's two things going on here. So you can believe in your words, like more or less, like that can go up or down. Yeah. So like an example of how that might drop is I've sort of explored for a number of years exactly what I was offering in coaching, and I was doing public speaking stuff for a bit, and then I was doing some like broader like leadership work. Anyway, it got to a point this year and I was like, okay, no, I'm really sticking with running my own business. So what do I feel like I can really offer with integrity long term? And the reality is that although I do have leadership experience, I felt like in terms of where like I could most give value was really around public speaking. Like that's a whole big journey I've gone through. I feel like there's so much of my own life that I can share. Whereas compared to like leadership experience, I do have some, and it's not about comparing myself to other leadership trainers, because I'm sure, I've got something to offer there that's different. But actually, I've chosen to have a reasonably reclusive lifestyle, living in a van. Like I'm in the New Forest right now. Right now, I don't have big plans to like scale the business like huge. I mean, who knows? Like that might change at some point. Like I might decide to train people in my methodology or something like that. But yeah, like I'm sort of existing in this like sort of slightly hermity life. And so if that kind of remains like that in 10 years time, I feel like I'd have like less relevant to stuff to offer, where I'll always be able to talk about public speaking, because I'm going to keep public speaking to run my business. Yeah. So it felt like for me it's not that I didn't have integrity with offering leadership coaching, but it felt like if I had to compare the two, that what I could really offer was around public speaking. So you see, that's an example of how you can have more or less conviction in the words coming out of your mouth. But also you can lose kind of connection with that conviction. So a word I'm going to start using more frequently is what you need to tether yourself to. Yeah. So sometimes we can have a lot of conviction in our words, but we've just kind of lost touch with that. We're not so tethered with that. And that can happen for all sorts of different reasons. Sometimes it's just because in the day-to-day running of what you're doing, you don't stay so emotionally connected, or you're not so directly affected by the impact it might have. So like as an example, like I had a bit of a quieter period with the business. I was having some difficult stuff go on before my dad died. He got cancer, he died. Then we got a puppy because I was getting really depressed last year, and I was like, I need to do something. So then I just looked after a puppy a lot. So the reality is at this stage, my business is a bit quieter, so I'm building it up again. And so I do have to keep bearing in mind clients I've helped previously that I'm not, in so much conversation with right now. To kind of tether myself and the conviction I have for my methodology and like me as a person, all of that kind of stuff. So do you see how sometimes it's just a case of like recollecting what we've done, yeah? Or even, I don't know, maybe in your work, often say if you're like in a leadership role, in some sectors you would have been really embedded in the direct helping of people at the beginning. And then as you've kind of moved into management and leadership roles, sometimes you become kind of a little bit more removed from like kind of directly delivering what the organization is doing in the world. And then you're more kind of like managing people and stuff. So it's definitely, I think, that you have to kind of keep going back and getting back in touch with your inspiration and hearing the stories of people who've, for example, bought your products or service or changed in the way that you wanted them to. Because otherwise there's this kind of distance that can happen without having your boots on the ground. So sometimes to increase your conviction is just going back and reading like testimonials, spending time with people. I really appreciated working with the leadership team in Ofgem. So I'm in the UK, so Ofgem is our energy regulator. And what I was really impressed by with the leadership team is how much effort they put into staying in contact with just normal energy consumers. So we arranged several times for them to, is it the chair? Anyway, chair and CEO, because there's a chair and CEO. I think both of them actually arranged to have like one-to-one calls with some of the people that I supported through my work at Repowering London when I was working in fuel poverty. And we also arranged for their leadership team to come out and have a meeting with local members of the community as well. And I think that was just a very good example of a team taking the initiative to come out and stay connected with normal, just like very, very normal people that they're, you know, paid to help. So what else can I say around conviction? Yeah, you can have more or less evidence for what you're saying. I think there is a kind of ethical sensitivity in here for a lot of people as well. Not everyone, because some people, I mean, they have values, so they have integrity in the sense of they live out those values, but they're not necessarily the values that I seem to be living out in my life. But I think, you know, for all the women I work with, there is this real ethical sensitivity. And sometimes you'll have been saying something or using a particular model of way of doing things for a long time, and you get enough experience, and there's just something like nagging you in your gut saying, I don't think this is the right way forward, or I think we need to do things better. And that's such an important, I can feel it in my body now because I've had it in the past. You must feel it too, yeah? That this feeling of there is a different way of doing this, there's a better way of doing this, or we need to challenge the status quo on this kind of issue, yeah? And so whenever, but I think sometimes we can contribute that like doubt to, attribute that doubt to ourselves. It's kind of unconscious. And so we really need to draw out what it is we believe about the way forward, and, you know, create space to really develop thought leadership, yeah, which needs room. Yeah, you need to be able to step back from the finances, the operations, everything else that you're doing, and just go like what have I learned? Yeah, what are the common ways of doing, like what is it about our model or our way of working now that I think we need to shift? And often you'll need a mixture of like introverted and extroverted methods for doing that. Like an extroverted example, it doesn't have to mean like talking to someone else, although I think that really works, and often in like one-to-one sessions I'll be doing that with someone. But, you know, even just like talking to yourself on a voice note or recording little videos that you never put on Instagram, that can be really helpful. As I said at the start of this, what kind of prompted me to do this longer video was through me kind of trying to articulate something. And actually, sometimes it comes out when I'm talking, but other times it will come out when I'm writing as well. So I do a mixture of, you know, voice notes and video recording and writing stuff down, and then, you know, having a chat to someone else about something. So you need to kind of know what works for you. I did a lot of writing for ages and really loved it. And then it was like a switch flicked a few months ago and I just couldn't write anymore. And I was like, I just need to do a load of video content. So yeah, so we need to start like grappling with things. And there's this other thing that will happen. What did I used to call it? There was something else. Anyway, there's a term for something that I made up. But anyway, it's like what happens is that you have an idea, like you feel like something's not right, but and unconsciously a part of you knows that to say, oh, that's not right, we need to do something different. Unconsciously, you know that's going to take you into some challenging communication, but instead of but that's not conscious, yeah. So instead of like admitting, oh, I'm worried that if I admit this to myself, I'll realize that we need to do X, Y, and Z, and that is scary, and I don't know how to handle that scary situation in the future. Instead of being able to be conscious about all of that and articulate it, you just go, oh, I don't know, yeah. Whereas I'm sure you do know, yeah. I'm sure if I asked you to draw out 5 things that really need to change in your sector that would directly affect how you work now and take you into kind of scary action, if we spent some time pulling that out, you would know. But often, like, women do this funny thing where they put it back in the box. I might do another video on that. The main thing to pay attention to around that for the next little while is when you're talking to a woman, see if partway through a sentence she just says, oh, I don't know. And she does what I call, you put yourself back in the box. Yeah. So yeah, I think, yeah, sometimes there's this kind of fear of, oh, if I thought about things differently, or if I allowed myself to think about things differently and to really own what I believe to be true, then that will take me into territory that's out of my comfort zone, and I don't want to know what to do about that. That feels too scary, it's too risky. So instead I'll just kind of pretend to myself that I don't actually know what we should do. Competence, let's see what else was in there. Nope, sorry, conviction. Ethics, yeah, I've done that bit. Right, competence. And so we're getting into like slightly more objective territory here, yeah? It's more about how, not quite how other people see us, but I think there are just, like if I just look at myself, I used to just be more anxious. I wouldn't record videos. My voice used to get quite high. I'd speak very fast. Like I've just uploaded a video from 2024 called The 9 Keys to Public Speaking Confidence. And that was one of my videos from the kind of like early days of me doing like specifically stuff around public speaking. And I can just see how I've changed between then and now. Like even just my tone of voice, my delivery is different. Like I speak much more from my belly now because I've changed and I've grown in myself. So yeah, there are, I think, more objective measures of competence. And it is really important to look at ourselves from the outside, because you might feel more confident, but you don't necessarily come across, for example, as more persuasive to other people. And there will be things that you miss. So the thing I really wanted to draw out about competence today was that I think we approach public skills competence, like the skills, like in the wrong way. I think we're looking at the wrong things. So some other people seem to approach it, and I used to approach it in myself, a bit like driving a car, or so it's like sort of operating something mechanical. So maybe it's a bit more like operating a robot or a puppet, because then we've got a kind of like human figure involved, haven't we? So there's all of these things that we don't like or think should be better about ourselves in public speaking, like our tone of voice, like I've just talked about that, the speed, how we hold our bodies, whether we're smiling enough or smiling too much, are we moving our hands enough or too little, or too much, sorry, are we making enough eye contact, do you like correct yourself if you say the wrong words, like whatever. So there's all like these things that you can kind of see from the outside. Like if I watch this video back, or you were to look at it, I'm sure there's things that you could say about what's going on in my body and my speech that we could like correct. Yeah, we could make better. So yeah, a bit like operating a robot. We're like, okay, we'll pull this lever or press those buttons, and then your voice will slow down. Yeah, so for example, now take a deep breath in and out, and that will slow my voice down. It will make it lower as well, which I'm told gives me more gravitas. You can decide. I think it does. My Barry White voice. It was really this little side quest I'm going to go on, ADHD side quest. I used to find it really interesting, and still do sometimes, when I would lead meditation classes in Brixton in South London, because I'd be going from this really full-on job working in fuel poverty. So I might have just come off the phone with someone who's very distressed. Sometimes I was dealing with safeguarding cases like child abuse, that sort of thing. Need to be calling an ambulance because someone's at risk of self-harm or taking their own life. And so I'd come away from, quite full-on conversations, be very busy, and then go into leading a meditation class that evening. And I could always notice how even within the first couple of minutes of just saying hello to the class, getting them sat down and starting them to let go of their external world and notice what's going on in their body, regulate their nervous system, that my voice would slow down in that process. So I became very aware of my voice and its relationship to breathing and feeling grounded at the time. So yes, that's just one area, right, where you might work on slowing things down, and that is helpful. Yeah, I've done a lot of that. I think it's when you're starting off, if you're a bit earlier in your journey with public speaking, or if you're just very anxious, like, to begin with, we do just need to work on things from a nervous system point of view, yeah, and just how to shift a few of these things. There's some like quite easy wins, right, to just kind of getting everything to like calm down and slow down. Like just teaching people to breathe properly is really helpful. But I think if you're at this point in your career where it's more about the presence that you're bringing, the kind of influence you have, like it's quite like a mature relationship that you'll have with your audience at this point, yeah? You're considered to be an expert in your field. People are looking to you for leadership. I think at this point, when you're not just delivering information, there's kind of more weight to what you're doing. There's more going on in the room in this kind of communication that you're having. We need to move away from that kind of model of just making the puppet dance to actually becoming dancers ourselves. So this is a metaphor I really want you to take away today and really get into your bones. So public speaking is a relational thing that we are doing. So it's communication, and by its nature, that is relational. And we miss that in most of our communication, yeah, that there's something going on between human beings here, yeah. Even if you're talking to like a big crowd, like the audience, you're only ever speaking from one person to another, yeah. That is how other people will experience you. On the other side is you talking to them. So if you like it's not necessarily easier, but a like kind of much more effective way of fixing things like your tone of voice, your delivery, eye contact, how you hold your body, the kind of like energy and feel that people have around you. We need to look at things like from this kind of relational perspective. So I bring up dance because my mum was a dancing teacher when I was younger. She taught ballroom, Latin American. She got into line dancing back in the day and partner country and western. And I just sort of remember watching her, and then as I was older, watching more videos of dancing. So Strictly came in, and then I was also on the dance team, dance sports squad at Cambridge. And so I'd often be watching videos. And what I'd noticed really about the ones who are very, very good is like the relationship they have with their own bodies. They have fantastic control over how they're moving, just like you want to have fantastic control over how you're moving in public speaking. But there's this kind of deep connection that they have with their partner, and you can see that in their movement. Yeah, there's this real kind of like emotional connection between the two of them. There's an emotional connection to like the music that's playing, and the but also like the kind of like the dance itself. Like they're sort of so in love with like the whole experience of it. It just kind of like oozes from them. And I don't know if I quite like that metaphor, but yeah, it radiates. There we go. It kind of like radiates from them. And that is where we need to get you with public speaking, yeah, to be kind of this deep connection with yourself, a deep kind of real close connection. There's like, dance is a contact sport, yeah. So there's real kind of intimacy and emotional connection with you and your audience. You're not just like treating them as this like amorphous group. This is why I really, really hate the phrase own the room or command the room. And I know why people are saying it. I'm sure you've used it before. I know other people are building their personal brands around, you know, those kind of phrases around own the room. And I get it. I personally have an issue with it because I think it creates a kind of polarization and a distance between you and your audience, which is the very reason why you are not connecting with them in the way you really need to, yeah? So yeah, there's this dance metaphor, you've got this connection with them. Where was I going with that? I just went off on one of my like, why I hate own the room, command the room. Yeah, so this kind, loving, being in touch with yourself, in touch with your audience, but loving the dance itself. Like, what does that mean from the point of view of public speaking? That means to embark on every opportunity for communication as an adventure. And in a way, it's about falling in love with being alive and just the kind of the wild possibility and unpredictability and terror of being a human being in a room with other human beings, trying to bridge the divide between us and to make something happen in the world. Yeah. And of course, I think then in order to really love it, that's why you also need to have conviction in what you're saying, because, you know, if you don't really care about what you are selling to your audience, again, whatever that is, selling in the broadest sense, if you don't care really about what you're selling to the audience, how the hell are you meant to fall in love with like being in a room with them and having some kind of like electric communication that could go anywhere like that? You're not going to have that because you don't care. Yeah. That's why I've really focused on supporting women and their teams, like, who really care about making a difference in the world. Because if you're not passionate about what you do, like, I cannot help you at this level. Yeah, really, I can teach you how to perform like make the puppet move a bit better, but my main, to be honest, advice to you is to go and find something that lights you up from the inside. Because how you are meant to radiate out any kind of energy when you are not personally lit up from the inside by what you do and what you're trying to make happen in the world, I cannot do that for you. Yeah. So I can help you go and find it, or I can help you like re-find that purpose. Yeah. I've had periods when, you know, it's been really challenging working in social and environmental impact. I have been devastated and angry and grieving. I've had issues with friends within my Buddhist order where my experience of it was being betrayed. I'm not saying I was betrayed, but my experience of the situation was of betrayal. You know, so there are periods when we have believed in what we were doing in the past and we lose connection with that because actually it's a lot harder. People don't do what we want. And so I can help you get back in touch with that. But yeah, like we can't love the dance of communication, yeah, if we don't kind of believe in what we're trying to do. So this is stuff, as I said, that we have to fix from the inside, and that kind of work has to go alongside the other stuff. Yeah. So yes, you can learn power poses and self-affirmations and breathing practices and little hacks for remembering things and all of that. We can talk about your posture, how to set up a room, things to ask your audience beforehand, all of that kind of stuff, which is great. A lot that you can get from that. But we need to do this deeper work, and that's what I think I really have to offer, coming from a Buddhist background and really being passionate about translating Buddhist practices and principles into secular approaches that apply here. So the skills I think we actually need to get competent at are in developing mindfulness and compassion, and they're the two buckets that I'm just going to talk about today before we get onto this other thing that I think we're often missing. So mindfulness from a Buddhist perspective, and a lot of it, by the way, is rooted in Buddhism. I don't know if other religions talk about mindfulness. I'm quite lazy in terms of like my history and finding out all the lists and stuff. But there's a lot of Buddhist teachings, what we could call suttas from the Buddha's time, about mindfulness, and a core one for us is the Satipatthana Sutta, which goes into the different foundations of mindfulness. So you might be familiar with mindfulness as sati, which is, we could say, simply like awareness of what you're doing in the moment. Yeah. So like, here I am drinking my cup of tea. I'm aware of the flavour of the tea. I'm aware of the touch of the tea. I'm aware of my posture right now. So that's one element of mindfulness. And we need that because you need to notice what you're doing in the moment, because you cannot change your behaviour if you're not aware of your behaviour in the first place. Yeah, how are you meant to change a habit if you don't catch yourself? Like, for example, I was anxiety eating a lot of the way through Dad's illness and death and afterwards, and I'm trying to get out of that habit because the sugar crashes and putting on weight and stuff, it hasn't made me feel very good about myself, and it's an addiction. But I can't stop myself from eating the extra stuff, the sugary stuff, if I don't catch myself in that moment when my mind starts turning towards the chocolate and the, or maybe I'll go and buy this. Yeah, if I don't catch my mind doing it, I can't stop it. So we've got mindfulness in the moment. You know, you might need to do a breathing practice if you're getting anxious just before getting on stage. But again, how are you meant to do that practice if you're not even aware, oh, I'm getting anxious? So yeah, we've got sati. But this other element of mindfulness, sampanjana, pretty sure this is in Pali. Excuse my pronunciation for any scholars, Buddhist scholars listening to this. So the sampanjana is continuity of purpose. So you become aware in the moment of what is happening, and then you get clear about what you actually want to be doing. You recollect, yeah, what you're trying to do, and that then means that you can shape your behaviour. So this is why it's so important to get specific on the thing that we're working on. So you might decide that I want to be calmer in my body. Yeah, you might just decide I want to feel more calm in my body, because that then enables a lot of stuff like your voice to deepen and to slow down. Yeah, so you would notice, oh, I'm tensing in my stomach, and that's going to start making my breath shallow, which will make me more nervous. So I've noticed, okay, my breath is tense, so my stomach is tense. I want to feel calmer. That's the recollection of purpose. So breathe in and breathe out and release around the stomach muscles. Yeah. You also might need to bring to mind what values you want to tether yourself to in your communication. So if someone asks you a bit of a tricky question or seems a bit out to get you during Q&A, like, which does happen. Yeah, I've had a client approached by a journalist who was trying to sway the conversation in a particular way. I don't even think they admitted they were a journalist to begin with. Anyway, I love a lot of journalists. You're doing a great job. Some of you, sneaky. So yeah, you might really want to root yourself in your core values. You might notice, oh, I'm getting a bit stressed here. Then Pedro doesn't seem to be he's seeming a bit green. I might have to go and look after him. I'll finish this up and I'll go and look after him. So, oh yeah, he'll be okay. He's just been sick. Poor little guy, but it's over in his bed, so I'll sort that out in a minute. Oh, everyone say bye to Pedro. What did you eat, darling? Not feeling very well. Oh, poor little puppy. He just threw up in his little dog bed. Hello, baby. Right, I'm just going to do a little moment of teaching, right? Something happens, like an audience member throws up. Of course, you need to stop what you're doing and attend. I had a moment where I was like, can I ignore what's happening? And actually I can't, so I'm just checking to see how he is. You know, something might happen in the audience, like someone might faint or whatever, or have a heart attack. And you just gauge the situation, and you can talk to your audience as this is happening. And it's like, do I need to do anything? I'm going to make a decision. Actually, I can sort out his bed afterwards, because I can't fix it right now. It's going to need to get washed. Pedro seems to be okay. He's got water. Yeah, there we go. And give him a little scratch. Check our little audience member is okay, and we're going to continue. Yeah. So it's okay. Look, if you have things happen, like an alarm go off or whatever, like we need to get you to the point where you are kind of grounded enough in yourself, and you've got enough awareness. And this is why the dance of communication is so important. Yeah, is to be able to shift your attention between what you're doing and what's happening, and respond as is actually needed. Yeah, not just kind of be like, oh my god, I've got a plan, I'm meant to be finishing this soon. Got to have that flexibility. And if we're coming from a place of love, as we'll get on into a moment, that is possible. So, little moment of mindfulness. Mindful of my doggy, mindful of you. So yeah, so there's these different qualities of mindfulness, and there's an important one that we'll come back to in a minute that most people don't know anything about, because you'll have never come across the Satipatthana Sutta, because most mindfulness practices are been completely decontextualized from their Buddhist stuff and stripped back to only a few kind of practices, which is, it's fine, you know, it's helpful, but it's not, you're not getting as much out of it as you could. So yeah, mindfulness, very important. You also need to be aware, there's mindfulness of other people too, which is really important. So what did I say? Mindfulness and compassion. So I'm going to talk about compassion and not loving kindness. So if you're part of my Buddhist, a member of my Buddhist community or order watching this, you're like, oh, why have you gone for compassion, which would be karuna, as opposed to loving kindness, which is metta? So compassion is where metta, loving kindness, meets suffering. And so arguably, I think compassion is the more important thing here, specifically in the context of working on a public speaking confidence, because you're going to need to develop compassion towards yourself. And this is where I get really annoyed when people are like, be kind to yourself, and they don't actually say what that means. I've done another 2 episodes. I think it's Change Starts Here and A Simple Method for Public Speaking Confidence. Both of those go into this thing around what I actually what practices you can actually do to develop compassion and kindness towards yourself. So the reason why it's so important is that most of the women I coach, and I imagine you, are very frustrated with any of their public speaking fears or flaws as they see them. So they're frustrated, they have shame around them, they're embarrassed by them. There's this very kind of negative relationship to this part of themselves. And so often the voices in their head that will come up after being visible are very self-critical. So I call this kickback. Yeah, so you can perform in the moment, but afterwards there'll be all these kind of voices pop up in your head, or this kind of feeling of a worm, yeah, and feelings of kind of intense self-hatred, even if they're not very conscious. So it's not that you just need to have kindness here. We actually need to understand where those feelings, where the self-hatred really comes from, where the fear comes from. And that will just be through past experiences that were probably painful for you, yeah? Or you've picked up, just checking my little doggy's all right. Yeah, it's okay. I am just going to pause a second. Let's just keep going. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to pause this. You just take a moment. This is what I do, by the way, in an actual audience. I won't be able to just pause. So let's just pretend like this is like a live thing. I'm just going to pause for a moment while I just check on Pedro, see if he's okay. What I would like you to do in these few minutes is firstly just come back into your body. Let's have a little mindfulness moment. Just check how you're feeling in your body. Notice the contact of your body on the chair, whatever you're sat on. You might be walking at the moment, maybe you're standing. So you contact the ground. Notice if there's tension in your body. So maybe it's around your stomach. Take a deeper breath in out to release that. And then I just want you to write some notes on what's kind of struck you so far. Yeah. And if you were to be taking one thing away from what I've spoken about so far, what would it be? I want you to actually write that down somewhere. And while you're doing that, welcome to my van, by the way. I'm just going to let Pedro out. I think he might be getting a little bit hot. So see, we can just respond to situations if they change. We don't need to kind of like freak out and not be visible. Yeah, we can just and that, by the way, because I've done this several times in my life. Hello, by the way. I know now what I do. That whole question around getting you to reflect on what's been helpful so far. Like if we were in a whole group together, I'd get you into pairs now. Come on, Pedro. Just wants to be able to sit outside. If we were like in a group, if it was a big audience, like I was doing a keynote speech, then I'd get you talking to the person next to you. Actually, that would be a really good thing to do. Because I've done a lot of teaching in my Buddhist community, and it's often like me talking and then getting into groups or pairs or whatever. I've just got a lot more tools, I think, that I can use. Right. So you've written something down, hopefully. How about you just like pause the video and type it in the comments below, then I'll be able to see that. Mixing things up a bit. Yep, let me do that now. Yeah, I'd really like to know, what are you taking away so far? Pause the video, write that down, and then come back to me. Very good. So, yeah, we need to develop compassion towards this part of ourselves that's scared or doesn't think we're very good at public speaking or wishes we could be better in different contexts. We also need to develop compassion towards the self-hatred, because there's these two different bits. There's like the fear, and then there's like the self-hatred of the fear. And we're quite complex things, aren't we? So we're not going to be those aren't going to disappear from us clamping down on them. Yeah. you can suppress for a while, but it comes out sideways. That's why you get snappy at loved ones, for example, beforehand. So it will always seep out one way or another. So yeah, these 2 other videos to help give you some practical methods around that. A change starts here and a simple method for public speaking confidence. Not got around to it yet, but there will be soon a video on here called the Kindness Collective, which will be a lead guided meditation practice that you can do. I think there's some meditation practices in my other series, Less Stress, More Impact in 30 Days, that might help for that. So yeah, so we need to have compassion towards ourselves, and we're also going to need to have compassion towards our audience. So again, this comes down to my thing around, I don't like any teaching that works on the basis of a polarization between, or sense of separation between you and your audience. So everyone coming, right, like, has their own little lives. Someone might come and their mum has died that day, but they can't bear to tell anyone yet, so they're just going along with their normal lives. Or, you know, they might have had a miscarriage yesterday, or today they might be unwell, like something really bad might be happening. They might be over from a country that's in a lot of conflict right now. They might be waiting for a diagnosis from the doctors. Like, you've got no idea what's going on in your audience when they show up. And this is really, really important, because often we make any little signals from them about us. Now, it might be, and you also need to take that seriously, but you might get thrown off in the moment if you're trying to, you know, make everything about you. And I often tell this story about how I was leading a meditation retreat about 10 years ago now, and there was a woman at the front who she just kept frowning basically the whole time that I was leading meditation in the morning. And I then started avoiding her in the coffee breaks, and I had this whole story in my head, and it was starting to throw me off when I was leading. I was thinking, gosh, do I need to do something different here? And I finally sort of got on and talked to her just to see how she was doing. And it turns out that she had really bad constipation. So she was just unwell, poor thing, and actually needed some help with working with physical pain in meditation, but she didn't want to admit that she had constipation. So see how you can make it about you when you don't know. So I think if we can step back and assume that everyone's got something going on in their lives, and work out how, you know, firstly, I just think that changes your tone, yeah? So instead of you trying to get something from your audience, you're just trying to like create a certain kind of experience for them. And also we can sort of reflect on, like, what is it that they actually need from their perspective. So I think one of the problems is that we go in trying to influence people. Yeah, we go in trying to sell the thing that we really believe in. So you might have a lot of conviction in it, and it might be that actually it would be beneficial for the person to do the thing that you want them to do, which is buy your thing or donate or change their behavior or introduce this policy, like whatever it is. Yeah, it might actually be beneficial for them, but you know, it might not be. But also I think there's something about approaching people as something we need to maneuver or fix that is in itself problematic. That you are actually more effective in influencing people if you stop trying to influence them. Yeah, if you just go like, and I'm sure this doesn't apply in all cases, yeah, because I've worked in some interesting sectors where there's very entrenched power dynamics and a lot of like money involved, and anyway, I think that's a whole different thing that's kind of needed. Arguably your keynote speech is going to do bugger all in that kind of situation anyway, but sort of generally when there's something that might shift with people, if you can just show up and just talk human to human with awareness of them and the wholeness of their lives, and not trying to like manipulate or maneuver, but you're just trying to inspire, yeah, and just say, look, this is what we're doing, or this is what I'm doing, this is what worked, this is why I think it could work for you in these situations, but it might not work for you, and that's okay. Yeah, you just kind of put this on the table, and that's that. And again, this is something that I think I've been really influenced from my Buddhist community. So we talk about Buddhism as being like the Dharma, so the Buddhist teaching being of the nature of an the nature of an invitation. Yeah. So one of the main ways that we like sell Buddhism, yeah, not that we're consciously doing like that in that way. But when we run like retreats, say like a weekend retreat for new people, one of the evenings people will give like why I'm a Buddhist talks, and that's just us talking about why we're a Buddhist, why we first got involved, is normally what people talk about. And they're just very effective, because no one's there saying you should be a Buddhist. We're just saying like, this is why I'm a Buddhist. And then if you want to get more involved in Buddhism, like, great. Like, go on another retreat, or come along to my study group, or run this class with me, or something like that. Yeah, it's not like we're out there trying to like, you know, maneuver or influence. And I think that's why we've been very effective, and I think that's why it can often feel very different, yes, because no one's going in trying to like persuade you or sell you something. I think we've got a real radar for that, yeah. And yeah, I think one of the ways that you can let go of trying to maneuver people is just go, oh, this person has something going on in their life. They may or may not want to do what I want them to do. So how can I kind of just love them first? Yeah. And then kind of present them with my idea. I present them with whatever it is that I think they might benefit from doing. And then just kind of leave it as that and go, do you know, like, it's okay if they don't do that. Like, compassion, you can tell I've been speaking for a long time because my words are starting to go. Compassion for me is about being able to love someone anyway. Yeah, can you just like offer this out to them as an act of love and say, this may or may not help you with this particular pain point you've got, but if not, I'm going to love you anyway. Like, there's a different kind of ethical integrity, I think. I think that's all I want to say about compassion for now. Where compassion really does arise, oh yeah, this is the other thing I'll say before this other fourth thing I wanted to talk about today. Oh no, I did have some other thoughts. We'll just keep rolling with this. So, like, how you might weave a compassion-based approach into preparing for a keynote speech, for example, would be just to really try to see things from other people's side. So, like, what might be difficult in their lives right now that is or isn't relevant to what you're talking about today? What do they want? What might they be projecting onto you? So people will come in with preconceived ideas about you. They might not know you. Yeah, you might just be a title to them, or associated with an organisation that they have more or less positive relationship with them. Certainly if you're in like a keynote speech, like you'll be in a leadership role, so people will be projecting things onto you, and it's helpful to think through where that might be positive and negative. Just think about what kind of day they might have had. As I said, they might have had a difficult morning, or maybe they've had a load of talks today and they might be quite tired. There was a common slot that we had to think about particularly well on retreat, which is often like 4 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon. People's energy is just quite low, yeah? They've often, by that point, relaxed quite a bit, which makes them sleepy because they realise they're knackered from their busy lives. You know, so that time of day, like, we're going to need to do something in particular with them, otherwise they're just going to fall asleep. Maybe that's what we need to do with them. Sometimes I'll just get people lying down and they can have a nap in the shrine room together, just meditating and falling asleep if they need to. And if they start snoring, I'll just go and give them a little nudge. So yeah, there's a whole kind of reflection process that we can do that will help shape our keynote speech. Like, if you don't know where to start with a keynote speech with planning, just think about all the questions and resistances that people might have, things that might be going on that are relevant to the topic you're going to talk about, and then just start answering them. Yeah, that can be a great start. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that's what I will say about compassion. It is a skill. I think people often think, oh, well, either you're kind or you're not, but it is a skill, and there are methods to develop that skill. So, for example, within my Buddhist community, there are specific meditation practices. Reflecting on those questions I've just given you is an act of compassion. That's strengthening that muscle. I sometimes just imagine, this is a funny little thing that I do, but I think it's worked over the years. So if I'm on public transport or just out and about, say having a coffee in a cafe, I like to imagine what I look like from another person's perspective. And what I realise is I'm often like this, I'm not even on their radar. Say now, like, I might, if someone was over there, I would just be maybe a pink t-shirt, that's all. And I do this quite a lot because I think it helps you see that you're not the centre of the universe. You're just this like tiny little thing going on. For some reason, like this like shift of me really, really, really helps. And then the other thing that we do with compassion, all my note is here is keep death in the room. You might not have thought you'd come across that in a talk about public speaking confidence and skills. When you are in touch, when you are tethered, when you are tethered to the truth, that all of us will suffer and die, it feels quite different to talk to people. Again, this is about letting go of trying to maneuver them. So Buddhists like to reflect on death quite a lot. It's an important insight practice. And actually in the Satipatthana Sutta, there's what we call the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So 4 different things to be mindful of. And the first grouping is mindfulness of the body, which includes mindfulness of the breath. I mentioned that earlier on. But one of the reflections is mindfulness of death, so of corpses. It's like a kind of reflection of being I'm not quite sure what the wording is, but anyway, there's a lot of these corpse reflections in Buddhism. It's really important that you don't do those unless you are in very good mental states, and I believe I strongly suggest you don't do it without actually talking to a practitioner who's very experienced, because those kind of practices can be very destabilizing if you're not careful. So I went through a period of recollecting death more as a specific Buddhist practice, and I ended up quite anxious. I think I was having a couple of panic attacks at the time and got a little bit nihilistic. Oh yeah, I was. That's how I ended up on Valium. Yeah, anyway, so for a week, one of the things that was going on, I was doing death recollections when I shouldn't have been. And so word of caution. But one of the reasons we do it, I think, is because it keeps it just keeps our impermanence present with each other. There's this beautiful couple of lines at the beginning of the Dhammapada, which is very, very early Buddhist text, sort of what we think, sort of very, very close to what we think the Buddha actually said. And there is a line in there around basically the message is you wouldn't be quarreling if you remembered death. And I think that it's helpful to bear that in mind with the audience. We kind of, certainly if someone's being a bit difficult or asking us difficult question, I don't mean just imagine them dead in some kind of nasty or kind of haha, they're just going to die one day, or you're dead to me or whatever. I mean really that person is going to lose everything they hold dear. They're going to suffer greatly in their lives and they will die, and so will you. And so when that kind of wisdom is present, because that is true all the time, that's true of me and you. One of the reasons I feel compassion to you is because I know you're going to die one day, and I've thought about that today before doing this talk. So when we recollect death, what's going on in my head sometimes is literally just bringing a coffin to mind. It's been helpful actually in that way since my dad died, because I led his funeral, so I literally had my dad's coffin right next to me. There's a pretty big recollection of death, and I'd seen his dead body as well. For me, it does really, really shift something. I'm going to do a series on Audre Lorde's transformation of silence into language and action, because that is basically a deep reflection on what changes in us around fear and speaking up when we are deeply tethered to the truth of our own death. If you've never read that essay before, please go and find it. It is brilliant. She has this kind of revelation when she is waiting for a lump to be diagnosed with, or to find out whether or not she's got cancer from this lump that's in her breast. And so she's already been very vocal about racism, sexism, I believe homophobia as well, and she knows that comes at great risk to death actually. But there's something about realizing that she will die and she can't control that, and actually it's not her body, it's not other people that might cause that death. It could be her own body. There's this whole kind of opening up around fear. So it's in a book called Your Silence Will Not Protect You. That's a quote taken from the essay, but that particular one, the transformation of silence into language and action, is going to be influencing a kind of, well, it's already influencing this one, but it's going to weave it more explicitly. We're going to go into it in a few more videos and really study that text. So that's another thing that we can do, but please do not just jump into that. You need to be careful with that. Everyone just gets into like this whole thing of like, meditation, that's a lovely thing to do. Like, if you are not in the right mental state, certain meditation practices are very, very unhelpful for you. You need to be very, very, I'm not going to say very, very careful, but in some situations you do actually. If you're going through a difficult period in your life, if you've got a lot of anxiety, that kind of stuff, we need to work on being very rooted in very buoyant mental states before we go into that stuff. So please do not listen to that and go like, oh, I'm going to find out what these corpse recollections are about Buddhism. Like, public health warning, that is not a helpful thing to go and do. So yeah, that's another, in a way, we don't even need to think about compassion then. In a way, we could just focus on mindfulness, and that would include the death kind of recollections as well. I could say a bit about other emotional states and the Brahma Viharas, but I won't. I will leave that for another whole session, I think. But I will just say compassion is one of what we call the Brahma Viharas. There are 4. Metta, which is love and kindness. Compassion, which is karuna. Upekkha or upeksha, which is equanimity. And then, what's it called? Empathetic joy. The word isn't coming to me right now. Anyway, this 4th one, it will annoy me. I'll get mudita. There we go. Sympathetic or empathetic joy. Love that one. So all 4 of those are important to cultivate, not just compassion, but I wanted to draw that one out in particular. But all 4 of the Brahma Viharas are very important for public speaking. Mudita, empathetic joy, very, very important too. That we'll do a whole video on that. So there we go. There's a reasonable amount about confidence, conviction and competence, and different skills we can develop in those via Pedro throwing up and a little teach about what to do when someone in your audience is unwell. He's doing all right. He's just hanging outside. I will go and check on him a second. Yeah, he's fine. I think he might be about to get himself tangled up around the van, but anyway, I'll go and deal with that if I need to. The thing I wanted to finish, which is I think not talked about enough, it is in some circles, certainly if you've got a bit more of awareness around women's rights and feminism, and I think, well, to be honest, just you don't even need to consider yourself a feminist, but if you are just aware to what goes on online and in women's lives, you will get this one. So the thing that's not talked about enough is risk. Yeah, and this is sort of relevant actually to the essay from Audre Lorde, is the very real risk that women face with speaking up. And you might have never had a negative experience in public speaking or being visible, but you cannot but be aware of the amount of risk and genuine threat there is to women through speaking your mind or just daring to be visible at all. And you can see this just from the amount of trolling that women get, but not just any trolling, like very, very violent, sexually violent comments that are made as well. Like, it's horrendous. And so I think for a lot of women, we can't talk about being more visible without really like genuinely talking about risk, not just about perception. It's not just in your head. It's very easy, I think, to gaslight women and to say, well, don't worry about that, yeah, when actually, you know, any woman could point to that like probably millions of comments every single day that are kind of directed towards women, like very, very hateful, very aggressive, you know, threatening to take people's lives and assault and rape women as well. Like, and tortures, it's horrific. But, you know, it doesn't just start there, does it? And you can just dismiss that as like, well, that's just, you know, some incels online or whatever. But the thing I often think about is like that experience of going through puberty as a teenager and becoming visible as a woman, and that change and the shift in attention that you get. And it is threatening, even if it's not made in a threatening way, yeah? Like, I'm sure like loads of the guys who wolf whistled me when I was younger, like not like an actual threat, but there is something about the shift in attention that doesn't get talked about when we're young. And it is quite scary. And then there's this whole kind of working out of the kind of sexualized world that we're in. And it does have an impact on us, yeah? And that's just that side of it, let alone what happens when you try and speak up about power and how you can be minimized and gaslit and affected by, I mean, and whistleblowing, for example, affects you. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or not. I appreciate that. So I'm not saying this is like gender exclusive, like, at all, but I do think, or even just like how we hold our bodies. So like, I'm sat here, you can't see it, but I'm sat here like this. Now I wouldn't sit like that. Like, if you look at how women hold their bodies on public transport, for a lot of your life you're probably being conditioned to hold yourself in. So of course that then affects you, like how you sort of sit or stand when doing public speaking. It will affect how you hold yourself, because you've had your whole life to be conditioned to relate to your body in a particular kind of way. And the sort of very act of being visible, I think for a lot of women unconsciously, is in itself very risky, yeah, because of the kind of sort of aggressive sexualized attention you get from when you're younger. You could go into a whole bunch of other stuff around, risk of women speaking up online. But I just wanted to highlight that. And it's not to kind of get us stuck in a kind of victimhood. It's to just understand why you might have such a strong response, such a strong anxiety response to public speaking. I don't want it to limit to that. I think there's a whole bunch of things here that can be coming into play, and of course it affects women differently. But when we appreciate the issues around risk and physical safety for women of being visible at all, let alone public speaking and being leadership roles, and your brain, I don't think, is very good at like differentiating between like different kinds of situation. I think there is something about the very act of becoming visible that in itself feels very threatening for the nervous system, even if the people who are watching us are very nice and good people. It's the sort of the act of the attention getting turned on us in itself, that moment, I think can feel very kind of like sort of scary on this unconscious level. I can often try and track it with mindfulness, yeah, the moment when I go from just being me going about the world, when the attention's on me, which can be recording a video, but also if I'm up front or I'm asking a question or sat next to someone who's what I call like a mega person up at Cambridge. He's got a lot of power and status and influence. If I ask him a question or the attention comes, I track the moment where I go from me having my attention out to someone's attention coming on me, and I can feel it in my body, even if it's someone who's like, as I say, lovely, and it shouldn't make me feel nervous. In some situations I will still blush very strongly actually as well, which I hate. I still hate that about myself. So yeah, we can't separate, certainly for some women, don't think we can separate this out without, talk about public speaking without really looking at the ways in which our body might be quite deeply conditioned, yeah, to stay small, to stay hidden, and for us to not risk sort of putting any attention on ourselves at all. And yeah, we'll be weaving that into some of the other videos. I'm sure there's quite a bit writing out on LinkedIn at the moment that I want to pick up from some other really brilliant women as well. So there we go. Have a little think about what are you taking away from this? Do you feel like you understand like the kind of territory that you might be in more? Yeah. And look, a cute little power pose or a mantra might be enough to sort you out. But if you've tried that with the breathing exercises and it's not worked, yeah, and you've tried that quite wholeheartedly, then I believe that like some of this other stuff may be going on for you. But there's things, the whole point of breaking it down is to be able to get clear on what actually might be going on, and then we can apply like the right solution to those other things over time. And it's not a quick fix, yeah. I was bullied for years. I've also had some very unpleasant interactions with men that I found very threatening. Stuff's gone on in like different leadership roles, so I had a number of experiences where I've been quite strongly conditioned to not speak up and be visible in a particular way. So it takes time to kind of work through some of that stuff at a deeper level. Like for some women, I think you do need to go and if you've experienced trauma that is affecting you in a particular way like that, you might need a period when you go and do something around that or explore something like EMDR. Others just might need a space to just acknowledge, oh, there's some stuff that's happened in my past. It's conditioned me in a particular way. How can I kind of work through that in a way that's not going to really dysregulate my nervous system? Yeah, so I can still be effective up front. So we'd love to know like what you're taking away from it. Yeah, the other thing I'd like to do today is just to invite you to apply to have a question answered on this show. So if you go to the video description, there'll be a link to that. You can ask a question, and then I think there's room in the form to give me some more context. But if there's a bit more context I'd like to get, I'll reply, ask a few things just to dig out a little bit more of this, so I can see what territory that we're in, yeah? And then I can give you a much better response. But if you just say, I'm nervous up front, it's like, oh, I don't know, there could be about any of this. I don't know, like you might be working in a really horrible team right now, and actually the thing you might need to do is like leave and get a different job, yeah? So yeah, I would love to have you apply, and I would love to answer your question on this show. I can do that anonymously, yes, you won't be identifiable in any way. So yeah, go and find that link, and I will see you there. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for everything that you are doing to make this world, it feels quite like twee or something, doesn't it, to like thank you for making this world a better place. But I really do mean that. It's hard, yeah, it is really hard. And so thank you so much for everything that you have been doing in your own way. Lots of love to you, and I'll see you in another video soon. Take care.